What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Never Touch Grass Cactus, and today we are going to be showcasing how to farm the loot from the brand new Ghosts of the Deep dungeon just added into Destiny 2 with the Season of the Deep, because it turns out the loot from this new dungeon is absolutely bonkers. I did a video showcasing the dungeon exotic, arguably the best strand enabler in the entire game, that's linked up above. And also, the weapons have arguably the best PvE origin trait in the entire game that lets you do stuff that you've really never been able to do before with these weapons. So again, did a video on that, linked up above. Check it out so you know what god rolls you actually want to get. But in this video, we're going to be showcasing how to one-phase kill both of the dungeon bosses. So, depending on what gear you have, you can choose to farm one boss or the other. Gonna be honest with you guys, both of these one phases are close. You have to do a lot of things correctly to get the one phase, but once you get it down, it becomes very, very efficient. And even if you don't, the boss will be left with a sliver of health and you can easily mop them up, and still it's a pretty darn good way to farm this incredibly valuable new gear. So, because of the closeness, there are some things that you want to incorporate into your damage phases that are going to be universal between these two different bosses. So, you're going to need firstly a Well of Radiance. You know, that's obvious, but you need somewhere to stand in, tank incoming damage, and increase outgoing damage. And I would also recommend this person uses the Lunafaction boots. That's going to increase the reload speeds of your team and just result in more damage output. In addition to that, guys, make sure to be using all three elemental surge mods that match the element of your heavy weapon so you can just do maximum damage. Now, in addition to that, you need someone to apply the Weaken debuff to these bosses so they take more damage. The easiest way to accomplish this is to use a Void Hunter with the Shadow Shot tether. Either one, the long-lasting one or the Morbius tether, those are going to be great. And in addition, those will eventually run out, so this person should be running the fragment that causes their grenades to also weaken enemies. So when that Shadow Shot weaken runs out, they can quickly throw a grenade, you know, something even like a magnetic grenade that's going to stick, especially for the second boss that moves around, is going to reliably apply that second length of weaken and again really increase your damage output. Don't forget your melee, your smoke bomb also can apply a weaken, so those three things should really last for the entirety of the damage phase. And then if you're really struggling for damage, I would also recommend someone uses an Arc Hunter with Gathering Storm. This is a fantastic super because it takes like 1 or 2 seconds to activate. You can stick the boss and do a ton of damage overall. And you can even use something like these Star Eater Scales, exotic legs, that are going to increase the damage of your super, of your Gathering Storm, even more so. In addition, you need to rally with reserves, which means put on a separate chest piece that has a bunch of reserve mods that match the element of your heavy weapon. Rally the flag with that on, and that's going to give you the maximum amount of reserves, going to give you a couple more shots in your heavy weapon, and then you can switch off of that chest piece to whatever, you know, other normal chest piece you want to run, and you're going to maintain those maximum reserves for more damage output. Keep in mind, if you die and get revived, those reserves will go away. So if you do die, you know, quickly swap to your reserves chest piece on, and then when you get revived, you'll keep your reserves, then you can switch to your normal chest piece. A little bit of a very complicated meta tip, but will absolutely help in the damage phase. Alright, now that covers the universals, let's now focus on that first boss. So in terms of triggering the boss to spawn, you really just want one person down doing the whole water shenanigans and the other two people up clearing ads and killing those Lucent Hive wizards as quickly as possible to activate those statues and then get the boss to spawn. Would recommend activating the middle, like back furthest statue first so that you're closer to where the boss spawns. There's actually not a lot of time between when you activate the third statue and when you have to be killing the guy with the well and getting the boss and all that stuff. So make sure your team is like in position, like everyone 3, 2, 1, okay, activate the last statue, head over. That's going to be way more efficient. Now, in terms of actually killing the boss, the key here is the Legend of Acreus exotic shotgun. This thing is putting out a ton of damage, especially with its new catalyst that grants it Trench Barrel, and you really want to be taking advantage of that. So you want to be meleeing, getting 3 shots off, melee again, 3 shots, melee, and then at that point it's going to be melee, shoot, reload, shoot, reload, shoot, reload, melee, reload, shoot, reload, shoot, reload, shoot, right? Like you're going to be having to reload and shoot, but again, it's 1 melee, 3 shots, 1 melee, 3 shots. Now, in addition, while you're doing this, you're also, if you have any grenades, like a pulse grenade, etc., you're throwing that at the beginning of the damage phase. Hopefully that can even recharge during the damage phase so you can throw another one. You're doing anything you can to squeeze out any extra bit of damage. And I would also recommend, in case you do run out of ammo for your Legend of Acreus, also run some other special weapon, a shotgun, a fusion rifle, something that can do some burst DPS just in case your Legend of Acreus runs out of ammo and the guy is still alive. You need just a little bit more damage. And you're seeing us combine all of those tactics into some successful one phases in the background gameplay. Again, it is close, so it's very likely that the first few times as you're getting used to this, you're going to leave him at a sliver of health. The good news is that it's really not too hard and it doesn't take too long to again get back to another damage phase, so you can just easily finish him off with your incredibly powerful loadouts. But guys, let's move on from there to the final boss. Again, I think this guy is a little bit more difficult to get the one phase on. However, the advantage is that if you can get it down, you're going to get 2 dungeon drops at the end chest. So obviously, it's a little bit more efficient if you can do this consistently. Now, for this encounter, some tips before we get to actually damaging is, first of all, you want to get all 3 symbols up before going off into the separate rooms and collecting the buffs to then plant these symbols. That's just going to make it go faster. And also, you want to be damaging, DPSing from this middle chest area of Oryx. And the reason is because the boss will still move around, but a lot less than anywhere else on the map. Like, she's always going to kind of be a little bit in front of you, and it was just a consistent way to DPS because the chest is always involved in that triangle. So it will always be one of the 3 locations you're going, which means you can start there and begin the DPS phase, lower her shield, and then go from there. Speaking of lowering her shield, if someone is using the Arbalist, that's actually going to break her shield in like a single shot, which is much more efficient because otherwise you're spending some heavy rounds taking down that shield and then damaging her. So try to get an Arbalist shot off and then go to town with your heavy. But speaking of heavy, one more tip involved with DPSing from this chest is that since it's involved in the triangle, the knight is always going to go there, and you can actually get Aeon finishers on the knight right here in this middle section. You know the knight's going to go there, leaving an extra brick of heavy ammo that you can pick up in the damage phase for just a little bit more DPS. So, there's actually a few different things that can get the one phase. I've seen people do it with linear fusion rifles. Another big one is going to be the Leviathan's Breath exotic heavy bow. Yes, this thing is schlapping. It's gotten several buffs actually somewhat recently, and especially with the addition of Archer's Tempo to it, so it can increase the rate of fire as long as you're landing precision shots. It can, again, get the one phase. However, we really didn't have much luck with it. Like, it is really hardcore, and if you miss one time, resetting that Archer's Tempo is pretty brutal. In fact, the easiest one phase we were able to achieve with this final boss actually came from rocket launchers, but with a little bit of a twist. Again, I've seen a lot of people one phase this guy with rocket launchers, but how a lot of people are doing it is just hoping to get lucky and have the boss not move too much so they can actually hit this guy with rocket launchers. Well, again, the tactic I'm going to recommend kind of takes a lot of that luck out of the equation, because what we did is used rocket launchers, which means you do want to have one person utilizing the Galahorn exotic rocket launcher to boost the damage of the other two legendary rocket launchers massively, but we actually used rockets with tracking. Specifically, I had this absolutely incredible god tier hothead, and it actually had impact casing, field prep, and tracking, and then it had lasting impression for more damage. So I could actually switch to field prep, rally for an extra ammo, and then switch to tracking for the damage phase. Now, of course, not everyone is going to have as juiced of a hothead as this, but that's okay. In fact, when we first tried out tracking rockets, we used precision frame rockets with built-in tracking, but those do the least amount of damage for any rocket launcher archetype. And you can see we did a huge chunk of her health in one phase, and looking at the damage numbers, Amateur actually was the Galahorn guy. Thick forgot to put on the right element of surges. So the precision frame rocket one phase is actually, I think, possible, and that means if you use another archetype of rocket, something like an adaptive frame or a high impact frame with just the tracking perk, those are going to do significantly more damage, and that's what we were able to achieve the most consistent one phases with. Because if you're in that Lunafaction well, guys, you're reloading so fast that you don't really need something like Clown Cartridge or something to affect the reload. Those exotic boots are just doing that. So you have kind of a free perk slot where you can use tracking, and then you're combining that with something to increase the damage as much as possible. So again, lasting, explosive light, even Vorpal, anything there is going to help. But we just hit so many more rockets thanks to tracking. Obviously, when the boss completely yeets off to the side, you're still gonna miss, but when they do those slow movements, the tracking can really, really help up your consistency. Now again, guys, this is what we found most effective if you do want to try out the Leviathan's Breath, linear fusion rifles, etc. As long as you are having that well, you're having the weakens, you're having a gathering storm, sticking this boss with a lot of extra damage, you can really come together and squeeze out a lot of damage and get the one phase with, you know, whatever tools you really find are most useful for your team. One other thing, however, that is an advantage of using rocket launchers or potentially even linear fusion rifles if they're legendary is the fact that, again, someone can use an Arbalist, but also someone can use a Lumina exotic hand cannon. This is going to let you shoot your teammates when the well kind of runs out potentially, or even, you know, during whenever, to provide a huge bonus to damage output. So that's just one more thing that can squeeze a little bit of extra damage out, and that matters when every damage counts and it is a close one phase. So guys, that is it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.